Oh, dang, you caught me. Hey, good morning. Good morning. Um, I have. Oh, dang, you caught me. Hey, good morning. Good morning. Did I say damn? I don't know what I said. Um, but I will tell you that this morning I am having some allergy issues, and which includes me sneezing up a storm. Congestion. I'm hoping that it is just allergies. Um, my nephew has had a cold. My brother got the cold, and they were over my house hanging out the other day, and both of them have colds. And so I'm just hoping that this is a allergy. And usually, when it's something that manifests in the morning, that's usually what it is. So my allergies have been pretty good this year, but I would still feel more comfortable if I had a box of Kleenex right here, which is usually what's here in my office. If you see my shirt wet, I just washed my face a little bit ago. Stephanie is not here yet, but I am. And I'm just wishing you a fabulous Sunday morning. Happy Father's Day if you are a father. Yeah, that's kind of cool to be able to wish you a happy Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to you. And happy Father's Day to your father. If he is still around, my dad is not, but I always feel as if I got him right here in my heart, right here in me as me. I could see, I could see me and him in me. I could see that. So blessings to you. My brother's happy Father's Day. Yeah, Kevin and Derek, happy Father's Day. Yeah, it's a good day. It's a good day. Yay. And the day after Juneteenth, and I hope you had a grand Juneteenth. I went down on Mall C like I said I would and had a good time and took my niece and nephew with me. And in spite of all the rain that we experienced early on, by the time we actually got into the park and got down there was no more rain. And at times the sun came through the clouds, and I don't know what it was, but it was something about that sun down there and the intensity of it that when the sun was out, it was like blazing hot. And then when it was a little overcast, which, we spent quite a bit of time with the overcast. It was just, it was bearable. It was good. So we had a good time down there. Miriam White was the headliner. She sung. She was really good. Karamu singers were great. And they had some dancers down there that were entertaining us. And then we did line dancing. And, there were some vendors out there, but, it really wasn't about the vendors for me. I know that people get yeah. Oh, so this glowing, right, is the funny thing is Erica, when I looked at my skin, I got in the mirror this morning and I looked at my skin and I was like thinking, oh my God, I'm having another allergic reaction. So besides the sneezing, I saw my face looking yeah, like it was like I was about to have an allergic breakout. So I broke out the scrub and I went back and I redid my face and I scrubbed it. I pulled out my brush. I brushed my face and then I started again. So if that is the glow that you're talking about, it's that is all of that, right? All of that scrubbing that I did on my face this morning. So thank you for pointing that out and being so darn observant. But I don't know that that's alleviating yeah, the stuff that I'm feeling. But so I had custard down at the thing. I got some East Coast custard, and what else did I have yesterday? I had some French fries yesterday too. And so all of that stuff is in my system. And I did not eat my celery stick yet today. Since I read Cicely Tyson's book, she was talking about how she cleanses her system every morning with a glass of carrot juice. I was like, I can eat a celery stalk. I mean, not carrot juice, celery. She swears by her daily glass of celery juice. And so I have been every morning eating a stalk of celery and just, I'm really being conscious about me and my health and just trying some different stuff out. So this could be the ice cream or the custard or whatever that is coming out of my system. It could be allergies. I was sitting in the grass yesterday. It could be any number of things. I'm not allergic to grass, but who knows? Sometimes and it's interesting because when I was younger, I didn't have any allergies. And then as I got older, I started having different types of allergies. So whether it was an allergy to cats or to certain dust or to laundry detergent, all of that stuff started after, I'll say after 45 or something like that. I started getting allergies. And so now I just deal with them. And it is helpful that I'm such a good student of other people and their issues so that when mine crop up, I have some idea about, handling those types of things. So we change every 7 years, I hear. Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, it is it's really amazing to me to watch myself and my body as I go through this. And I started immediately thinking to myself that I sat in the sauna the other night for a while. And that was good. And so when I looked at my face this morning, I was thinking to myself, I need a good steaming again. So I think that was Friday night. And so I usually try to do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I don't know, I might just do it today. I might get in there, just depending on how my day goes. I might get in the sauna, pop in the sauna again, and also steam my face. And this, having my hair in this style is helpful. It's about time to get it done, but it's helpful. So anyway, I got stuff to talk about and to do. And let me check my phone, because usually Stephanie will tell me if she's not going to be here. And I have no message that she is not going to be here, so she still might pop in at some point. But nevertheless, I am excited about getting started and seeing what today unfolds. So remember yesterday, I put this little thing on my glasses because I'm always looking for my glasses, and I really prefer to just to just have them right there handy. So I bless you, I greet you, happy Sunday, happy Father's Day, all that good stuff. And I am excited to talk to you. We are still working out of Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Ness. And we are in the second chakra area and about to embark upon personal power. But for right now, we have this, we are still in this where it talks about ethical energy. And I'm just yesterday when I ended up I was saying that I was basically at the last paragraph of that section on page 160 for those of you who are following along in the book. And we are going into this thing of personal power and the second chakra. And so I have, of course, got a lot of stuff that I want to talk to you about as it relates to both of those. But in an effort to end this up, and today I talked twice today. So today is actually Sunday, and I will be on at 1 o'clock and talking about something totally different. But I want to make sure that I tell you up front that I'm going to be on at 1 o'clock. So in case you want to circle back and watch at 1 o'clock, I will be speaking here as well. So when we talk about this thing of ethics, the way that it ends up is with this idea of personal vengeance. And she says personal vengeance is another thing that is found in that area of the second chakra, or the misuse of the second chakra's energy. And so she says that it is the center of this idea of self-defense and weaponry, right? And so when you think about it, when you think about where you feel things in your bodies, like emotions or anxieties or the need to protect, the second chakra is our sex organs again. I say that over and over again because a lot of times what we just see is like the energy centers displayed on a silhouette, not even a silhouette, but an outline of a body. We see them there, but we don't ever really think or consider how it manifests in our bodies. So a lot of times when you see people who, and I'll talk about this again because she brings it up under this personal power thing, but a lot of times when we see people, Stephanie says she overslept. How could that be? Look, by 4 hours, like, or is that 3 hours? Look, I'm gonna say, I have to laugh at this. So she must have had her a super fantastic night last night to oversleep by, because Stephanie gets up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. So to say she overslept is some real oversleeping. So so when you think about how we seek to protect this protective energy that we have, a lot of times what you'll see is that when people are feeling nervous, what they do is they'll put their hands and they'll hold their hands in front of their crotch, right? Their second chakra, or if they can't quite reach their crotch, right? But it is usually like this thing of unconscious, and the unconscious clasping or covering over. You'll see people, how they put their hands up there right in front of it. And because that is one of the things that we go to protect first and foremost. So whether we are talking about a woman or a man, it is customary when you are feeling threatened or something to first seek to protect that area before you protect any other. We don't hold our hands in front of our hearts. We hold it in front of our crotches, right? So when you think about that, she says it is the center of self-defense and weaponry, that chakra area, and is designed to be worn. So weaponry, stuff like that, is designed to be worn around the second chakra area. And then she says that although newspapers today are filled with reports of people delivering justice with bullets, most often acts of taking the law into one's own hands are based on personal, psychological, and emotional laws of honor, like the desire to get even. And so And so when we have somebody who has injured us in some type of way, sometimes we don't always articulate it as that. But a lot of times what we see is when you have a desire to get somebody back for something that they've done to you, sometimes that can have a corrosive effect on you personally and on your spirit, because what that means is that you are harboring an emotion. So when you have the desire to get even, it's not something that is just in flux and that passes through, but rather it is, you need to hold on to it to see that it is carried out. Now, I used to always find this funny because, but somebody told me that this was in my astrological, um, uh, on my astrological chart, was that I had an inability to hang on to anger. So say for instance, I can run into a person and I'll get the impression or the feeling like there's some reason that I don't quite, I don't want to say I don't like them, but I got a reason for feeling some kind of angst when I'm around them. And most of the time I can't remember what it is. And so then it seems like I'm brand new because I don't remember what it is, that it just kind of, it floats past me. I don't have that ability, but it does serve as a warning sign, like beware, Sandra, beware, that this is a person that I might have some type of a friction with, even if I can't remember what that friction might be. And so this idea, though, of getting even is corrosive. Let me read to you what she says. The energy of vengeance is one of the most toxic emotional poisons to our biological system. Talk about toxicity. And I thought you were just flighty. You're so sweet. It's so funny because you just had to get that in there. So, okay. Causing dysfunctions ranging from ranging from impotence to cancers of the genital areas. So sometimes when you see people who are angry, I've seen people like this, especially when it involves like a separation or a divorce. One partner or another will take on the idea that somehow when I said till death do us part, I meant it, right? And then you make a decision otherwise, right? And then they're still holding anger because what you've done now is derailed their whole plan, their that flow that they are in. And so I have somebody in my family who had gone through something similar like this. It was a bitter, bitter divorce. And oh my God, was she angry. She was angry, and she was harboring uh, a level of resentment that was just unimaginable, to the point where she was just not even communicating with him, not interacting with him at all, other than with their child. And so what eventually happened, though, um, she was so angry. I wanted, like, I don't even know that I can explain to you the depth of her anger, right? Um, and so she was so angry that eventually what happened, and she was doing stuff that was reckless as if to get back at him, like the worst thing that he can imagine that I'm doing is, messing with this person or doing that. So it was a lot of stuff that was self-destructive too. And so what eventually happened was is that she developed an illness, and she got so sick that she could no longer care for herself or her child. And then she needed to turn to him because either, she because she couldn't care for her child and she couldn't care for herself. So she ended up having to talk to him. And in that, they kind of healed some of the anger that was in their relationship. But that was just a clear indication of how immediate that level of toxicity and that level of anger is concerned. And I will say that sometimes we get mad at people because they make decisions otherwise, right? That we don't particularly care for. And people tend to take it personal as if it is something that is being done to them. Like, you broke up with me, right? Or you forced me to make this decision, whatever the two are concerned. And so in that, when we are blaming another person, we are acting as if we are totally powerless and innocent in the situation. And a lot of times we know that that was the best decision that could have been made for all parties concerned, but we don't want to own that because we want to be right. And sometimes it's that need to be right that is also toxic. And so you have to, when you're dealing with something like this, you have to be aware that these types of toxic thinkings has repercussions. Now, let me say to you that nobody wants to hear that. You keep blaming me, you're gonna make yourself sick. Nobody wants to hear that, right? I can't imagine going up to somebody that's really, because I get the anger, I get the hurt, I get the aborted dream or the aborted fantasy of forever after, right? How do these stories, and they lived happily ever after endings? I get that, right? But even in that, we have to also look at the times where we turned a blind eye to the issues, because most of the time we see it coming. At least I do. You may not. You may be caught in your unawares, right? About to say underwear. but but we see these things coming. We see that there's some issues, and a lot of times it has absolutely nothing to do with us or what we brought to the table. So sometimes you see, when you get into relationships, that we get into relationships not based on who the other person is, but what we think that this provides for us. So if security and safety is a part of our DNA, to desire security and safety, if that's a part of our DNA, we think that we're going to get that through a relationship or with somebody else, and that be sustainable, right? But at the same time, when we look at it, if you are seeking that security and that safety outside of yourself, you've already misplaced it, and therefore have built your house upon a faulty premise, or built your sense of self upon a faulty premise. And that is always liable to be cut down, right? And so at a certain point, we have to take back this thing of personal power for ourselves. So as we transition into this, I think about it from that standpoint, right? That anytime you seek to blame somebody else for the situation that you were in, you are outsourcing your power. You are saying that your power, the power that you have, has been basically usurped by somebody else. And in order to take back that power, you then have to put yourself in the driver's seat and see what part you played in it, even when you want to say, I didn't do anything. He did this and she did that and blah, blah, blah. That does not serve you, right? It does not serve you. So don't get stuck in that situation. Don't get stuck in that kind of thinking. If nothing else, dive down deep. Sometimes when I have ended relationships, I have not ended them with the thought in mind of, was this the right thing to do? But I've ended them with the thought in mind, why did it take me so long to to make a call that I knew was inevitable in the first place. And that's hard. That is a hard thing, right? Because that takes some reconciliation too on your part, right? And sometimes it is, because because you like them and love them so much as a person. And even though you know that the relationship is not going in the direction that you want to, just having that adoration there is not enough. It's not enough. And so that's my truth. I'm not going to dwell down on that any more than I have. I'm just going to leave it right there. And if you've got specific questions or something that I can answer about that, that's cool. But the idea of blame, the idea of vengeance, those things, toxic, detrimental to your health. So look for a way within yourself to shift the blame away from another person, own your piece, own your part, and then heal that. Do the forgiveness work that is necessary, because until you do that, that toxicity boils like putrid something, right? It is corrosive. So give me 1 sec. I love water at room temperature. It doesn't always serve me though, but I love water at room temperature. All right, so this is the personal power chakra. And so we're moving into this section. And before, I tried to talk about, I don't know, was that maybe a week or so ago, when I talked about the idea of what power was versus energy. And so I talked about energy as being an atmospheric thing. It just is. It is, it is just something that you are in, versus power as being a force, like, like a having the ability to cause something to happen. And so this is talking in specific about this idea of personal power. And so I wanted to delve into this and talk about it, because this is sometimes also a difficult thing, while it is, because it involves being introspective and truth telling along with yourself, right? And for a lot of us, that is hard to be really introspective. I don't know any other way to say the term. So I'll just kind of delve into her work and do my usual and talk about it from that standpoint of view. She says, while creativity, sexuality, and morality and money are all forms of second chakra power, the desire for personal power also needs to be discussed, right? So personal power. Power is a manifestation of life force. Now, we require power in order to live, to thrive, and to function. Illness, for example, is the natural companion of powerless people. So, and what does that mean to be powerless? Now, I kind of want to just kind of touch on that for a second, because there are a difference between a powerless person and a person who has been rendered powerless by circumstances. So there are some people who carry with them a natural energy, a natural power about themselves. There are others who have whose power has been usurped, somehow overridden, somehow beaten down. You will see this in manifested in all types of ways. In our society, people want to render powerless, say for instance, women, or they want to render powerless children, or they want to render somebody powerless in how they see them. African Americans, Blacks in this society, they want to render you powerless. And so they do so by manipulating situations as opposed to having a person who lacks power. You will see people who lack power. They are afraid of life. They're afraid of the world. They are not being able to within themselves generate their own power. I just got a flashback. And I want to flash back to Back to the Future, that movie, Back to the Future. I'm making a note of this because it just popped up in my mind, and I thought it was a good example. You will remember that in Back to the Future, where that was played by, what is that man's name? I'm drawing a blank on his name. Whatever, y'all know the story. Anyway, his father. Oh gosh, now I gotta. Here it is. So I'm looking this up. So Michael J. Fox, right? Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future. He had a dad in there, and I can't even remember what his dad's name was, but his dad was a powerless guy. He was a nerd's nerd when he was in regular time. His dad just no power whatsoever. He looked like he was broke down, like he was bent over, like his back was hunched. He gave off the energy of being powerless, and he was raising children, and therefore in their family he was a mousy kind of guy, blah blah blah. Anyway, when they went back to the future and Michael J. Fox encountered his father, he had a interaction where he saw that this man named Biff was constantly picking on, belittling, bullying his father. And so it gave going through this stuff, however it transpired, his cowardly, powerless father, in one of the Michael J. Fox's visitations, ended up hitting Biff, ended up defending his wife, which then when you saw the timeline and he went back into the past, everything had changed. And it changed because he had an act where he assumed power in that moment, which changed the trajectory of how his life was. It changed his career. It changed the way that him and his wife interacted. It changed all of that stuff. And so when you see powerless people, because they are in a powerless thing, they court this thing called illness and dis-ease all the time because they're lacking that. I gave the analogy when I don't know how long ago, when we first started doing this book or doing other talks in the morning time, whether it was doing the piece just after the Lent series or now, I don't know. But I gave this example because I think I probably got it from Carolyn Miss, but it was such a powerful example for me. And one of the things that she talks about is that we as humans, like say for instance, if you use the analogy of a light bulb, say for instance, we need on a daily basis 100 watts of power to work or to stand forth in the world on a given day. That 100 watts of energy or power we are using not just for bodily functions, because there is a certain base amount of energy that we need just to talk, to blink, to think, to digest, for our organs to move. And so say, for instance, that the base level of what we need is about 45 watts. Let's just say, right? It's kind of like when you look at your computer, right? It needs a certain amount of megabytes just to function, just to boot up. And that's the same with our bodies. So naturally, let's say naturally, we get 100 watts of power every single day. 45 of those watts of power we use just in basic body function, right? That's basic stuff, right? Breathing, heart beating, digestive system, all of that stuff. We get 45, that's 45 of our 100 watts there. That leaves us with what is that? It's not even 65, it's 55, right? In order to function for the rest of the time, right? So depending upon what you do on a given day, if you walk, or if you exercise, or if you whatever, those take a certain amount of energy, right? If, say, for instance, you have at any given moment, you got a baseline of what you're given, just like the computer, right? You see it on the computer. When you go into your little management thing, you'll see that there's certain functions that are going on that requires wattage, right? And so whether it is opening up a browser, or it's feeding something into your Word document, or feeding something into that, all of those things require a certain amount of power, because there's a monitoring of that too, right? And so if you are sitting up, living in the past, or sending your energy into hatred, or sending your energy into thoughts of vengeance, all of those things are sapping energy. It's like leaving a refrigerator door open. You've got stuff that you are sending to that. So say, for instance, you're living in the past. You think that your heyday was in high school, or your heyday was when you first got married, or your heyday was when you were wearing a size 7-8, or whatever it is. If you are sending energy, when I was 165 pounds, or when I was such and such, if you are sending energy to the past, right? That is energy that you do not have to use in the moment. So sometimes people are sending, let's say, 10% of their energy or their wattage to something that has no power to do anything, to make a difference in this moment now. Sometimes it's more than 10%, because sometimes if it involves anger, you are at a 20%, right? You are sending 20 watts of your 100, oh, no, I'm sorry, because I said you have 55 watts left over. So of 55 watts, if you got anger, even if you are not actively involved in the anger at the moment, there is still an open channel that goes towards that anger. If you are living totally in the future and not in the present, you are sending wattage to a future that is potential, but not actual. And so you are sending energy in a different direction than the now moment. And so you can count that off as another 10%. Sometimes when we are doing stuff, there are things that add energy to us, right? But so often we're expending or spending energy. And so we're so busy spending energy on things that don't serve us in the now moment, right? So there are certain things that cost us, and they cost us more. So judgment, gossip, things that are negative, those things like compounded interest, those things we are sending energy to. And in sending that energy to it, we are, a lot of times it's negative energy, so it does not have the impact of adding something to us. There are things that you can do, whether it is prayer, whether it is meditation, that takes you in the direction of adding to your energy. So say, for instance, if you take a 10-minute meditation. Instead of having 100 watts, you do a 10-minute meditation, and then that increases. And so you get, now instead of having 100 watts, you've just added on 20 watts of power to the 100 watts that everybody naturally gets, that what's dispensed naturally on a daily basis. You add to it through meditation, you add to it through prayer, you add to it through exercise, you add to it through doing something that is positive, life affirming, and building. When you gift another person, whether it is financial gift, whether it's compliments, whether it's building them up, when you elevate, when you praise, you get additional wattage of energy. So sometimes you have the capacity of building up your watts to an extra 200 watts, or getting an extra 100 watts. So you now have 200 watts of power as opposed to just your 100 watts of power. And depending upon how you are spending that, if you are getting caught up in toxic relationships, if you're arguing on a regular basis, all of those things deplete your energy. If you're sitting in front of a television on a regular basis, you are spending wattage of energy sometimes. And when you start to not only so you got 45 that's just natural, just to breathe and exist is natural. And then if you are sending a whole bunch of energy into stuff that is not increasing, what happens is sometimes we start to act at or live at a deficit. If you're walking around in guilt or shame, you're operating at a deficit, right? And so all of those things deplete your energy instead of adding to it. And so what we need to do is, I'm just saying, what needs to happen is you have to figure out ways of adding energy as opposed to depleting energy. And in the effort to add energy, you get more, which means that now I got some in reserve and I got some for tomorrow. And I know how to, if I want to increase it on a daily basis, I figure out how to increase it by eating things that add to me. What? By listening to things that add to me, by doing what I do. And so sometimes what happens is unbeknownst to us, we also give people energy to other, we give it to other people. So when we give someone our attention, what we are doing is we are sending currency to them. So that means that, every time we watch somebody, every time we praise somebody, every time we do something like that to somebody, we are actually like, even if you think about it like, oh, I just gave them 5 watts just because I'm thinking to myself, or connecting to them on a basis. And that's one of the reasons why I tell people, when I bless myself on a daily basis, when I'm blessing and saying that whoever looks upon me, may they be blessed, I'm giving out energy. And I'm knowing that as people stare at me, as they look at me, they are receiving that energy. And so I never get mad at people for looking at me. I'm always saying, ooh, get your blessings. I don't say that to people all the time, because sometimes I do. But I don't say that to people all the time. But I certainly don't get mad or begrudge them for staring at me. What I do is I usually turn and look at them and smile, because I know that it's like, suck up this vibration. Right? Because I am in the business of how do I don't even know that I think of it on a conscious level, but I know when when I'm doing stuff, I know that it feels good. I know that what I'm doing is I'm increasing my ability to have something to give. So let me be a conduit. That's how I'm looking at it. Like, let me be a conduit. Let me get this so that I could give this, right? And so in that way, I can't help but receive some blessings. But if you're judging, if you're getting caught up in your judgment, you are depleting your own energy. You're sending out. It's like I'm contributing, like wherever it is that you are sending out negative stuff, even if it's not reaching a person, it is leaving your energy field. And so what we're doing is we're talking about this life force energy that we have to figure out how to use. Now, I didn't said all of this. Let me go back to what Carolyn says, right? Because she says power is a manifestation of life force, right? And there is all of this out here that is possible for us to have, to access, right? But what we do a lot of times is unbeknownst, because out of habit, we get caught up in our judgments. Out of habit, we get caught up in a whole bunch of other things. And I will tell you that there are energy vampires that are out there because they cannot figure out how to generate energy on their own. And so they figure out how to suck it from you. Now, there was a story that I read about these Buddhist monks who, part of the life of a monk is that, from what I understand, part of the life of a monk is that sufficient unto the day. It's a fullness thereof, right? They have this philosophy that says that they don't need to go and worry about where they will get their next meal from, right? Yeah. Because what they do is that they trust the goodness of the universe, of God, of the Buddha energy, that they will have exactly what they need. And the moment they try to accumulate something, they have then stepped out of this role of being able to trust that the universe will provide. And so in doing this, sometimes they do whatever it is necessary in order to get their next meal. One of which is that I heard that there was a group of monks, especially when bed bugs were bad in India, who would voluntarily lay in your space in order to feed the bed bugs their blood so that they didn't suck yours. And in exchange for a service like that, you might feed them, right? Now, could you imagine saying to somebody, you know what, let me walk into this room before you do and let all these mosquitoes bite me so they won't bite you. And then you go around for the rest of the day itching. You know? And so there will be people who will give to you your energy in that type of thing, where they are constantly being the sacrificial lamb for your energy. You see this a lot in what we call term domestic violence, or in relationships and families where somebody becomes that sacrificial lamb, that person who lays down and takes the suffering away from somebody else so that they can stand taller in the world. That person, because of the nature of it, and it's not based on a spiritual principle, like I'm saying with the monks. It's not based on a spiritual principle, but rather most of the time is taking it, right? The premise around slavery was somewhat the same thing. You've got somebody that's trying to exert power and control over somebody else so that they stand up taller in the world. And therefore, that does not actually add positive energy to them, but rather a negative energy that seems as though it's positive. So let me read this because I'm just explaining to you the way that I have learned this. And she has a whole different kind of vernacular that she uses around it. So let me delve back into here. She says, we require power in order to live. I just explained that. To thrive and to function. Illness, for example, is a natural companion to powerless people. Everything about our lives is in fact involved in our relationship to this energy called power. Okay. At the level of the first chakra, remember that is the not the sex organs, but the anal area, that tribal power. She says, we feel a sensation of power when we are with a group of people, that is tribal power. And so so say for instance, you're with a group of people in which you are bonded in some type of way. And so she talks about when like January 6th, that insurrection, right? That's a group think. It is a group think based on a particular ideology, political stuff like that. And they carried with it this kind of, you know, feeling, enthusiasm. You will see this kind of thing played out. And if, you know, in college or in sociology, we learned a lot about the group mentality, whereas as an individual, you would never think of going up there and just trying to take over a government building, right? You wouldn't imagine trying to do such a thing. But when you are involved in a group think, all of a sudden there is an emboldened amount of power, and it doesn't just reside on with one person, but rather the group or the mass that is you are involved in. So enthusiasm of sports, and political rallies, things that people unite with, or an idea that they may be galvanized by, that exemplifies that type of first chakra power. I talked about this in relationship to, I talked about concerts that I have been to, that, you know, you get a massive group of people and it starts to seem as though it moves and operates as one collective unit, one collective heartbeat, one nation under a groove, right? Because I have been there, getting down just for the funk of it. But that's the first chakra level. The quality of power in the second chakra, she says, however, expresses this energy in physical forms like materialism, authority, control, ownership, sexual magnetism, sensuality, eroticism, and addiction. This is a second chakra area, sex organ stuff. That power is different than the group think kind of power. So every physically seductive form that power can take is energetically connected to that second chakra energy. And so unlike the group thing, she says the first chakra, the group type of mentality in the first chakra, the second chakra is a one-to-one thing. It is not necessarily, it's just one-to-one, right? It doesn't involve a whole bunch of people or a whole bunch of entities. It's just that one-to-one thing. So she says each of us as an individual needs to explore our relationship to physical power. We need to learn how and when we are controlled by external power, right? When someone is yeah, to learn when we are controlled by external power, and if so, the type of power that we are most vulnerable to, right? Okay, so think about it. What type of power are you most controlled by, right? When you think about, and there are some that I know, I will tell you, it activates me. As a matter of fact, let's see. I mean, and there are so many types of power. So, gosh, I don't even know where to start, because there were so many that I could use. Women, we are very interesting, right? Animals are very interesting. In the animal kingdom, you will see stuff played out like people fighting for dominance, and it's physical, brute kind of power. You will see sometimes the leader of the pack who assumes power. And that power is not always based on physical strength, but sometimes based on respect or authority, right? Or and a lot of times it's not always a tangible. So one of the things when I said women are really interesting, guys will constantly talk about women who I forget what the term is, but there is this kind of a dynamic where people seem to want to fight for dominance within a group, right? Um, and that sometimes can be carried out in a number of ways. Sometimes you'll see it by, you know, I've heard people talk about salary or how much money they make, or who they are, what kind of profession they have, or they who dresses the best, who looks the best, who talks the most, who travels the most. There are any kind of number of things that people may express or share that is kind of like the sensation of fighting for dominance, right? And so I don't even know what the term is called. It is I don't know if it's top dog or because it's not. I've heard people express it, but I can't think of what the name of it is. But there is usually like a spawning for some type of power that you may have if those folks are into that type of expression, right? Some people I laugh all the time because every time I think about that, I think about that episode that I saw of South Park where Cartman was screaming, "Respect my authority." And I find that hilarious all the time because people want um they scream for or demand respect, and respect is something that is naturally given when you've got the natural energy for it. And so sometimes we want respect and we don't respect ourselves, or we don't carry the energy of respect within us, right? So if you don't have personal power, or if this is not something that naturally flows from you, you are always trying to figure out, how do I grasp that? And sometimes what people try to do is they grasp it through making demands, or as opposed to knowing that people naturally detect even beyond the, like I know when I've seen people when they walk up to a group, they will naturally look at a group of people and determine who the leader is without anything being spoken, without anybody saying a word. They just kind of naturally cue in on who it is that they perceive as the leader. And most of the time they're right? Because you're not looking at it, and usually it's not a conscious thing. It is, you look and okay, that becomes the person that I'm talking to. Sometimes what happens is that because the group has appointed somebody else, like say for instance, you're in a group and you are with people who are even your superiors on the job, right? And they come up to the group and they look and they see who they think is the dominant of the group, and they talk to the dominant, although that's not the person who is actually running things. But it is a natural inclination to kind of look for that and then to speak to that. And so what you have is people saying, right here, you need to check with me right here, right? Because they need to then determine that through a verbal thing, because physically or energetically, that is not necessarily the case. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So, so all of these things are at play when we talk about this thing of power, of natural power. I don't even know that I'm articulating this well, right? Because one of the things that she says is that this conversation about power is usually very hard to have. And I'll get to that someplace, I think. So I won't preemptively talk about that. So we need to learn how and when we are controlled by external power, and if so, the type of power that we are most vulnerable to. So let me tell this quick aside story, because I was thinking about it earlier when I reviewed this stuff. I had this professor when I was in college, right? I had a professor, and this man sat there one day in class, and this is Sandra, right? Because I will tell you that listen, I have a problem with authority. I will admit it. I have a problem with authority. There's a confession for you. All right. So I had a professor when I was in college who, when we were sitting in class, he started talking about this idea of power. And he started saying to the class, and maybe it's a small class because it was in my philosophy department. Let's say there's about maybe 11 people in there. It's always interesting when my stomach does a growl. I think about what I'm thinking about. So there's maybe 11 people in this class, and I usually sit, and because I am so, I'll use the word conflictual. I'll use that. I usually sit in the back because I'm usually trying to hold myself from making a comment. Because I know that in philosophy, they wanted you to say who said it first. Like you need to let them know whose idea you were sharing. And I'm usually sharing Sandra's idea. Now, somebody else, you may say, oh, that sounds like so-and-so. But what my sincere truth is that I'm sharing Sandra's stuff. And so, but I'm sharing nonetheless. So anyway, this man, he's sitting up there and he's talking and he's trying to explain this ideas around power. And he says in this class, he says, so I have power over you. I get to determine what your grade will be if you graduate. And he's sitting up there talking about his power that he had over us. And y'all know that just caused me to rise up, right? I was like, I said to him, I said, no, I said, I think you've got that twisted. And he was like, well, what do you mean? He says, I am the professor here. This is my class. You are attending my class. And I said, well, you have power insofar as we grant you power. I said, we pay for this class. At least I do. I pay for my class. I said, I come in here and I willingly subject myself to your tutelage. I willingly take your test. And I willingly submit myself to being graded by you. But don't get it twisted, because what I am doing is I am paying you to render that service for me. The moment I don't feel as if you are rendering the proper service for me, I file a complaint because I'm paying for this. And if you are not giving me the best tutelage possible, then I'm filing a complaint because I want a refund. And I said, so they may be submitting to your authority. I said, but we are doing this in exchange. Whoa. I was like, no. Right. I used to argue with my professors about stuff like this all the time. because I wanted them to understand that there is a reciprocal relationship there. And if there is a reciprocal relationship where I submit, right? And I apparently am in agreement with that because I show up on a regular basis. I am not one. I was not a student whose parents sent me to learn. I was one who voluntarily went to school and paid out of my pocket for a class, right? So if you are feeling as if you don't have a place in the scenario, I could see taking on the attitude that one is powerless in that situation. I was not. I was not. As a matter of fact, some students would be like, you sit in there and you wait a certain amount of time for a professor to show up. They would have all these things. Well, you only got to wait 10 minutes if this person is not a full tenure, or you got to wait this amount of time. And I was like sitting up there saying, God darn it, this person is late again. I would surely go down there and file a complaint, because I'm sitting up there saying, I'm paying for this. That means that I want your butt here. And if you are missing class, I'm not clapping. I'm not sitting up here thinking that this is funny and fun stuff like the rest of these kids. I want my money's worth. so this whole thing about how we view the circumstances of our life matters, right? If you are acting in the role of a bystander constantly and not recognizing yourself in a driver's seat or in a position of power, then that way you are still acting and operating in a deficit. And so we have to actually value the things that my attention is valuable, right? What I give my time, my energy, those things are valuable. If I'm just throwing it away and it doesn't matter to me, then I have a different relationship with all of this stuff. So you have to think about the types of power that you are vulnerable to. Is money seductive to you? Right? Is that a manipulator for you? And then how much money, right? How much? Is it sexuality, right? Does that physicality, right? Sometimes we have to think about these things in terms that are different. Like there was a woman that I saw at the park yesterday who used her beauty, I'll say. She used her beauty to kind of like saunter through the crowd. And this is no judgment, right? I'm not trying to judge. I'm just being observant. Like, okay, so I'm going to saunter through this crowd and I'm going to watch and it was the whole smile and the disposition and the nipples that were showing and the whole little way in which she carried herself that was really provocative and seductive in its look. I mean, she may have had no intentions whatsoever towards any of the people that interacted with her or that she interacted with, no intentions whatsoever, other than to say, this is a currency that I can use and I can use it to my advantage, right? And then who is seeing me use this, right? Who's watching me? What's the dynamic here? All of those things factor into that. So if it's eroticism, if it's addiction, if it's ownership, if it's all of those things, think about the type of power that you're most vulnerable to. And then what kind of power do you yourself possess, right? That's an interesting thing. And one of the things that she says here is, I still haven't got to that. So I'm not going to go into that. I'll just leave it right there for right now. And and then we'll come back to this. I think that analogy that popped up in my head, Spirit, thank you for that, right? about Back to the Future and the power dynamic between Michael J. Fox and his father and his mother, and how that kind of, I think it's not only apropos, but I think you know, just looking at that dynamic and speaking to that and seeing how that works in the world. Sometimes what we do is even if we don't have power anymore, right? Because say, for instance, it was a job, or it was some money or something that gave you power. What happens is that you have a remembrance of what it feels like to wield power in the world. And so you continue, therefore, to wield that power in the world. A person who was a stripper, right? Has a very different dynamic with men, even even years later before, because they have a remembrance of what it is like to hold a person's attention, how to grasp it, how to hold it, and then how to use that. And so that helps them in maneuvering through the world, in their business practices and things like that. And then that power is seductive too, because what happens, and I know for me it's happened, is that the power of attention, of being able to garner attention, is also something that is powerful, and it draws more power to you. And so it is sometimes that you know, you may see people do any number of things in order to get and maintain that. It's time for me to go, but I want to throw this one last example out there, because it was something that I mentioned to Rhonda on the 5 a.m. club about today. Was that at one point when I was doing my TV show, I had a woman who came on who was being interviewed for a book that she had written. And as I thumbed through and I read the book, I don't know if you've ever done this before, but you read the book or you read something and then you look at this person, and then you read something else and you look at the person before you, and it's not adding up. It's like somebody writing the lyrics to a song with a music that doesn't belong to the song. It's not adding up. And so I was asking her, I said, well, where did you get this information? And she was like, oh, I wrote it. I wrote the book. And I was like, yeah, I don't think you did. And she was like, but I did. My name is on it. But I got the real sensation that she had plagiarized. I didn't have any proof, but it just didn't sound like who and how she sounded didn't match with what I was reading in the book. And I could not, in good consciousness, therefore, publish do an interview, or I couldn't broadcast an interview with something I just didn't believe. I just did not believe it. I felt like every part of me felt like it was a lie. It was a plagiarism. It was a lie. As a matter of fact, I got so mad at her because, she kept like following me up, like, well, I said I wrote that. I just couldn't get with it, right? Buck stops here. And I don't know whatever became of that. I don't know. I have no clue. But for me, it was being able to look at dynamics and pick up and then be true to what the impressions are that you get. That is that's power too, right? To be able to convey, to listen, to garner, to use that in a way that works. Yeah. And there is there's something in that. All right. I'm going to go, and I will be back on at 1:00 today to do the broadcast for Agape Renaissance Center. So I appreciate the fact that you, did your morning with me. And thank you, Erica, for your comments. And I thank you all, whoever was here, whoever listened. Thank you and blessings to you. And I hope you got something out of this, right? I trust that you did. not just about the vengeance piece, but also about the power piece. Really think about it. I think it's something that is worthy of your attention. So with that, I will be here tomorrow at the same time, 7:15. But today I'll be back at 1 o'clock. So blessings to you. And I will see you. I will see you soon. All right. See ya.